Hey guys, and welcome back to a brand new video. So today's video is going to be editing in the style of TONI MAHFUD or TONI MAHFUD. I'm not really sure how you say his name. So I've had loads of requests to make this video. I've got a few DMs from people. They've asked me to see if I can make a preset pack for this as well. So I've gone ahead and I've done that. I've put a link down below. The first link in the description should take you to the preset pack. There's about 6 presets in there, I believe. It should get you to your photos to a very similar style to his. So if you do want to go and check that out, just go ahead and click the first link in the description and see what you think. So his photos are quite a unique style. He uses quite a lot of contrast, quite dark photos. So what we're going to be trying to do today is editing a photo that looks kind of similar to this one, obviously not identical, but we've got these very bright highlights and these dark shadows and a similar kind of vibe to this kind of urban city kind of cityscape. So we're going to be editing a portrait photo as well. This is the photo we're going to be editing. If I apply one of the presets, this is what the final look is going to be. This is what we're going to be trying to replicate. And as you can see, looks very similar to his look. Maybe a little bit too pink, but we'll see if we can change that a little bit when we're going through the editing process. Okay, so don't forget to subscribe, guys. There is a load of content coming out to the channel over the next month. We're going to be trying to upload every single day, so it's a big commitment for us. So if you are interested in like Lightroom editing or Photoshop editing or anything like that, there should be a video for you already on our channel, and if not, there should be something coming out. So do go ahead and click that bell button, get notifications turned on, and go ahead and subscribe. Okay, so before we jump straight in and start editing, it's probably worth looking at a few of his photos and trying to work out what he does to get this very specific look. So, for example, we'll look at this one. This one's quite a good one because it's kind of dark and contains basically all the colours that we need to use. And so, as you can see, regarding the lights, the highlights and shadows and stuff, you can see he's got very dark shadows. He doesn't use any fade at all. He's got a lot of clarity. You can see this in his eyes and his hair. You can see it's got quite bright highlights, maybe not the best one. This one isn't the best one to use for that example. This one here is pretty good. But this one here, you can see the amount of clarity he uses. Loads of clarity. You can see really quite sharp images, bright highlights, quite dark shadows. He doesn't use any fade. He's got quite contrasty look. And as you can see, in lots of his photos, he kind of only focuses on using 2 or 3 colours in his photos, and the rest of it's kind of desaturated look with this kind of white and black kind of vibe to it. So what I would recommend is when you're trying to look at a photo that you want to edit in his style is kind of choose a couple of colours. I'd recommend going for this kind of dark orange brown kind of colour and this kind of deep blue navy kind of colour. It's quite interesting because he's not really gone for a orange and teal look as such, but it is kind of orange and dark blue, so slightly different to orange and teal in pretty much every one of his photos. So if you go for that kind of look, you'll get a very similar photo to his. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to jump straight into the photo. This is one we're going to be basing it off. So the first thing we're going to be doing is using the basics panel here. So what we're going to do is reset this image here and get it back to the initial photo. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to first start off with this basics panel. With the exposure, I'm just going to leave that at standard at 0. That obviously depends on your photo. If your photo is too dark, bring it up a bit. If it's too light, bring it down a bit. His photos are usually pretty dark, so I'm going to leave mine at 0. But the contrast we are going to increase. You can see in lots of his photos, he's got a load of contrast. You can see really dark shadows, really bright highlights. So what we're going to do is we're going to increase this one quite a bit, probably all the way up to about +40, +45. Highlights, I'm going to bring these down a little bit. Now, that's just to get a little bit more detail in the highlights, a little bit blown out here. You can't really see much going on in the highlights, so I am going to bring those down a little bit, just down to about -21. Obviously, this does depend on your photo and how bright the highlights are, but I'm going to counteract that by making these a little bit brighter in a second. Now the shadows, as you can see, we've got a very contrasty look at the moment. So I do want a lot of detail in the shadows, so I'm just going to bring those shadows all the way up to +100. And you can see immediately we've got so much more detail in the shadows. If I do a before and after, already we've got a lot more going on in the image. Now with the whites, as I said, I'm going to bring those up just to get that really stark contrast. Could bring those up probably to about +30. And the blacks I am also going to bring up to about +30 as well. Now, you can bring the blacks down if you want to, but again, for this particular image, that's going to make it pretty dark, and it's probably worth keeping in mind that on a phone, so roughly about, I guess, this size, it does look quite dark if you bring these down too much. So it's always worth noting that when it's like on a mobile phone, or if you're going to upload it social media or something, then I'd go for a slightly brighter looking image. Okay, so the thing that's going to make this image really pop is going to be using the clarity. So as I said, in his photos, you can see that there is a lot of clarity. I showed that in this example here. Really high clarity, really high contrast is really what makes his images look like this. So what we're going to do is we are going to increase the clarity probably to about plus 40, plus 45. So this is quite a big kind of increase on the clarity. You don't usually do this much, but it really helps bring out those really sharp highlights and those really dark shadows. Just makes the contrast really work quite well. Now with the vibrance, we're going to leave that at 0. That's because we don't have many colours in the photo, so if you bring that down and the saturation down, you can end up with a pretty dark black and white monochrome looking image. So we're going to leave the saturation at 0, but we are going to bring down the saturation to about -10. Sorry, leave the vibrance at 0. So now that obviously depends on the colours in your photo. If it's a really bright, colourful photo, I recommend bringing your saturation down a little bit more. And again, obviously, if it's not, then bring it up or whatever. The saturation kind of does depend on your photo, but for this one, I'm just going to bring it down and tone down these colours a little bit. Okay, so now with the tone curve, as I pointed out in his photos, he doesn't have any fade and he doesn't really fade out those highlights. So the shadows are really kind of dark and contrasty. So what we're going to do is we are going to make a kind of rough S-shaped tone curve, but we're not really going to do too much. So what's worth pointing out is he does have quite dark shadows and he does have quite bright highlights, and he's got quite contrasty midtones. So keeping those in mind, what we are going to do is increase the highlights by clicking a dot up here. Bring it up a little bit. I'm not going to bring it up too much, but probably about there, that's alright. And then we are going to bring down those shadows just to get that contrast back into the image without making it too dark. So just bring them down a touch, not too much. And then those midtones, again, we're going to bring those up just a little bit. You've got to be careful with the midtones, because if you bring them up too high, you get a really strange looking image. So probably only a small amount, that'll probably be okay for us. So what we're not going to do is put a fade in. We don't want to be doing that because it's not the style that he does in his photos. And again, we don't want to be fading out those highlights. So we're going to leave it at that, a very simple kind of S-shaped curve. But you can see if I turn it off and turn it on, it does add a little bit more contrast and detail into the image. So once we've done that, we're going to come down to the hue, saturation and luminance panel. Now with the reds, we're going to take these down probably to about -50. That's just add a little bit more pink in skin tones. With the oranges, we're going to take these down to probably about -15. That's just to add a little bit more pink into the oranges so they don't go green, because you can see if you bring them up to the right, everything starts looking a little bit anemic and a bit green, so we don't want to be doing that. Okay, now we're going to do the opposite with the yellows. We're going to take these up to about +5. Now that's because if we take them down, we're going to be getting too much of a pink look in the oranges, and to bring them up, we're going to add a bit more yellow in. So probably bring it up to about +5, +6, +9 would be okay for us. Now with greens, now this does depend on your photo, but you can see in pretty much every single one of his photos, he doesn't really have many greens in the look. So you can see, for example, this photo here, these are kind of greens, this is green, but he's kind of given that dark blue kind of teal look to it. And you can see his headphones here, pretty much everything that was green, he's kind of tried to make it a little bit more blue, just kind of stick with his kind of two-tone blue and orange kind of feel. So that's really quite important. So if you have got the greens, don't bring them down to the dark greens, bring them up to the blue kind of side. I'm going to bring mine up to +100 just to kind of get this look in the greens down here on the little box. Okay, with the aquas, we're going to kind of leave those as they are. You can see they do kind of change the colour of the box again. Maybe bring those up a little bit, just kind of get more of that blue green kind of look, probably to about +14. Now the blues, this is going to change a little bit in the image. You can see there's a bit of blue going on here and up here, and I guess a little bit in the shadows, but lots of this is just kind of greys and blacks. So as you can see, if I bring that down, we can get a really nice teal look to it, or we can get that purple look. So if we go into his photos again, as I said, he does have that kind of dark tealy blue kind of look to his photos. As you can see, for example, in this one, this is a kind of a nice teal kind of colour, and again in his water, a little bit of that teal and orange kind of vibe. So we are going to take the blues down a little bit, just towards the teal side. Maybe bring the aquas up a little bit more, just to kind of bring back the blue into that, just to make it a bit more of a bluey teal as opposed to more of a greeny teal. I know that may not make so much sense, but just to make sure we kind of don't go too green, we want to make sure we're doing that. Okay, so now with the purples, as you can see, if I move them around, if I bring them down to the left, we get a bit more of that blue in it, and we get more of purple if we go into it. So we are going to bring those down just about -100. And then with the magenta, not really much is going on, but we're just going to put those up to about plus 30, plus 40, more towards kind of the pinks or the reddy pinks side. Okay, so now we're going to be coming down to the saturation panel, and we do want to be increasing the saturation a little bit. Now that's because, as you can see in his photos, when he does have these blue and these orange kind of colours, they really do pop out quite a bit. So really kind of bright, kind of colourful oranges. Although they're muted and they're a little bit desaturated, they do kind of pop out against the background. So the only way to really make them pop out and stand out against this really dark, desaturated kind of background colours is to kind of increase the saturation. So we are going to increase the reds probably to about plus 10. That's just to get a bit more colour in the skin tones. We can increase the oranges probably to about 25. That's just to get a bit more colour in the rust and the lights up here. And then the yellows as well, probably to about plus 30, just increase those ones. Now what we are going to do is we're going to take the blue saturation all the way down to minus 100. Now that is really going to lose the kind of the colour that we put in the image. In a lot of his photos, all these blues are kind of desaturated. We don't want to have so much vibrancy in the blues. So we are going to take the blues, maybe not down to minus 100, maybe down to about minus 90, minus 95. We're going to leave everything else as standard, and then we're going to come down to the luminance panel. Now the only thing we can really change on this is the blues, just to bring those up a little bit to about plus 50. That's just to really brighten up these blue highlight bits. And then on the orange, we are going to bring those up just to get a little bit more contrast in the highlights and the hair. And then the yellows as well, just kind of brighten up the lights at the top. Okay, so now that's done, we're going to come down to split toning. Now split toning is a slightly difficult one because that does really depend on the photo that you're trying to base it off. But as you can see in lots of his photos, let's choose this one here, for example. This one's quite a good one. You can see down in the shadows here, it does look a slightly tealy blue kind of colour, and in the highlights we have got more of that orange look. Now obviously we're going to try and replicate that in our look, and it's probably worth noting that you can see, because the daylights in the highlights here, we've got a lot more orange in the highlights, and we have got a lot more blues in the shadows, so it should hopefully work. So what we are going to do is we are going to increase the saturation of both of them to about plus 10, just so we can see what we're doing. And we're going to adjust the highlights to probably about 39, 40. You can see if I hold down Alt, that's going to show us the actual colour we're going to be applying to the image. So plus 40, plus 38 is giving us that nice orange feel to it. 10 is probably a good amount. I wouldn't go much higher because you start getting a bit weird. Maybe plus 6, plus 7. Only very subtle split toning, but it does again make a big difference. So again with the shadows, I'm going to put the saturation on 10. And we're going to bring these more to the blue side. So this is usually in the 230, 250 range. So as you can see, that's a little bit too purple, so a little bit more to the teal kind of blues. Not too much teal, because we get a little bit of a greeny look to the image, but probably something around 200 should work quite nicely. And as you can see already, that does bring a little bit of colour back into the image. It does give us that dark blue teal look, as we can see in his shadows here. Okay, so then coming down to the detail tab, we are going to increase the sharpening a little bit. Now we don't want to increase it so much because when it's small you can't really tell, and you can see a little bit of noise and grain in the image. And we're going to increase the radius to about plus 3, and we really want to try and get that detail look in the photo. Noise reduction we are also going to increase, probably only to about plus 10, and that's just to kind of remove any grain that we're going to be adding in with the sharpening, but hopefully keep that really sharp look. Actually, we can leave the noise reduction probably at only about plus 4, plus 5. We don't want to be losing too much detail, so just a really subtle change there, but hopefully it should add a little bit more to the image. In terms of lens corrections, we'll leave those as they are, and the effects, there doesn't seem to be too much vignetting and stuff, so we're going to be leaving those as standard. Okay, so now coming down to the final part of the image, this is the camera calibration. So as I said earlier, we have got more of that orange and teal kind of look, so to get that, what we're going to do is drag up the hues to plus 100 to kind of get this kind of greeny orangey look, and then bring down the blues to minus 100. So you can see immediately that gives us straight away an orange and teal look. But again, that's really quite saturated, and we really don't want that, so we are just going to bring down the saturation of both of them quite a bit, just to really only apply a very subtle change to the image. Again, got to be careful not to bring the blues down too much, to lose too much of the colour, but that is looking pretty good. I'd say about minus 15 on the reds, minus 10 on the blues. So you can see it does make a big difference. As well as that, it kind of brings back the orangey look to the skin, because you can see if I turn it off, we had too much pink going on there. And you can change that by changing the red hue. But there we go, that seems to be pretty much the photo edited. If I do a before and after, so there's the before and there is the after. So you can see if I flick between the two, we've got a really quite a different feel to the photo. If anything, I might take down the teals a little bit. It's looking a little bit too blue. That's probably changed if we kind of bring back the blue primary a little bit. I need to put about -30, -40. But again, that's going to depend on your photos. So if we compare that one to, say for example, this one, and kind of look at his theme, you can see this one would probably fit in quite well with his look. So I hope that has kind of cleared up a few things for you guys, and hopefully you can go ahead and try and replicate his style as best as possible. Obviously don't try and copy it, try and work for something that is more unique to you. I hope you enjoyed that video, guys. If you do want to go ahead and purchase that preset pack to help support the channel, I will put it down below in the description for you guys to go ahead and check out. It would be great if you guys could go ahead and purchase that if you are interested. So once again, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully we will see you in the next video. Live long and prosper.